Okay. Well, I am just quickly going to introduce Dr. Stein, if that's all right with everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for the invitation.
And so, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Stein is an award winning medical professional in psychiatry with a career spanning decades. She is a distinguished chronic illness educator, researcher, and activist. Eleanor has dedicated her career to integrating conventional and holistic approaches and applying the concept of neuroplasticity to help patients improve their health and function. So, with that being said, I'd like to pass it over to Ellie, and we will be taking questions after her. First, we'll have her presentation, then we'll transition to mine, and then we're going to have an open question and answer period. Can everyone hear? Okay, I see somebody. Okay, great. All over to you now, Honor. Thank you.
Okay, so were you going to ask me a few questions or you just want
Mhm.
me to charge in?
Well, the first question I have is if you wouldn't mind telling us your story and how you came to offering online education for complex chronic illness.
Yeah. Um, so, I probably came to this the way many people in the field have. Is my volume okay for verbal? Okay, great. I got sick. So I was booting along in life thinking everything was pretty good. And I was 24. So that was in 1989. I was in the second year of my psychiatry training. So I had already done all of my pre-med and medical school training. And I was now subspecializing to be a psychiatrist, thinking that's what I wanted to do because that was the most difficult and fascinating area of medicine. I was wrong. And I got really sick. Nothing dramatic. I just thought I had a flu and that, like many of your stories, it would pass in a few days and it never did. And if you think back to the history of MECFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, and chronic fatigue syndrome, the very first definition, the Holmes criteria, came out in 1988, and it was very focused on infectious symptoms. So when I read that criteria, I didn't really relate to it. And I really spent the next 8 years not really knowing what I had and not having any idea what to do about it and being kind of frustrated and increasingly, I won't say desperate, but not very happy with my fate in life because I couldn't do, my life had been totally upended, as many of yours have, and I couldn't do almost anything that I wanted to do. I was working part time or, making my way through my program very part time and uh, never happily, like never having a good day where I would just wake up and feel well. well. And then to make a really long story short, finally, 8 years later in 1997, I came across another physician who also has the illness, who taught me everything she had learned, and she was way ahead of me in her learning. That made a massive difference. So, learning the foundational self management strategies, how to get better sleep, how to pace, because trust me, I had not figured that out on my own. What would a healthy diet look like? I had not figured that out on my own. How to manage my emotions better so that I wasn't constantly discouraged and worried about the future. Um, Trying to decrease my exposures to various toxins because I also had very severe chemical sensitivity. So, all of that foundation really got me through the next, we'll say, 20 years, not well, but at least surviving. And as one of my friends says, keeping my knuckles above the table. um, and then in 2017, well, in 2014, I started practicing neuroplasticity. and my multiple chemical sensitivity went away right away. And then in 2016, I did a major diet change. Oh, in 2015, I started using red and infrared light therapy. 2016, I changed my diet. So I still had this really strong foundation of daily self-management upon which I layered some of these other strategies. And finally, one day in 2017, I woke up and thought, oh my gosh, I feel different. And that better feeling has maintained since then. So I'm fortunate. That's now 7 years. I have other health issues, so I just don't want the word to go out like I'm running marathons because I have a bad knee, etc. But in terms of daily energy, cognitive function, mood, GI function, so many of those things that were extremely problematic before, I would say I'm well.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's incredible, the journey you've been on. Can you tell me more about how you use neuroplasticity and what symptoms respond the most to this approach?
Yeah. So I first read Dr. Norman Doidge's first book in 2007, I think it came out, The Brain That Changes Itself, and I was totally fascinated. And then I read all of the references, but I couldn't figure out, okay, how could we apply that, say, to me or to my patients who I was working with? And then when his second book came out in 2015, again, I read the whole thing multiple times, watched the CBC specials. So for any of you, it's called The Nature of Things. And there's two or maybe even three specials featuring Dr. Deutsch and his work. And I spent a lot of time puzzling over how to apply it, but there were many, many more hints in the second book. So I've spent the last 9 years experimenting on myself, teaching my patients and now my community, some of the strategies, getting the feedback, fine tuning. And I think I've got it narrowed down to it's more complex than this, but at its essence, your nervous system has to be calm. So the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, the vagus nerve, whichever term you're familiar with, that has to be active and not asleep. And there's a bunch of very simple, no to low cost strategies that you can use to do that. So for this one, the most powerful strategy is breath. And Shannon, I'm sure probably breath figures prominently in your teaching as well. So at the very basics, as soon as you extend the out breath, you activate the vagus nerve. It's that simple. And of course, when the vagus nerve is more active, you breathe more calmly. So it's a bit of a positive cycle that you can train your body. And then the second part of the four parts that I think are kind of the top of what you need to do for neuroplasticity to work. The second one is safety. So it's kind of related to calm because if you're feeling in danger, of course, you're continually activating your fight and flight, your adrenaline's popping up, your cortisol's high. And when you're in a state of fight or flight, you can't actually think very clearly because your amygdala, your limbic system is in charge. And it's like a 4-year-old child, it just does what it wants. And the prefrontal cortex, which is our executive center, which we need to really plan a good course of action, is downregulated when the amygdala is in charge. It's like a seesaw. So you can't have both up at the same time. And in order to feel safe, there's many useful strategies. Meditation has a long proven track record, very, very well done research that it increases prefrontal cortex function and decreases limbic system function in the moment. And if you study what they call Olympian meditators. So people that have meditated for more than 10,000 hours, which is like hard to even believe, uh, then these changes become your new default, right? So this is yet another example of how neuroplasticity works. If you practice anything often enough, you create new brain pathways and they become easier and more efficient and more effective until they become your new default. It's like starting with a goat trail and you have to like constantly pull branches away and it's hard and effortful. But the more you walk it, some of the plants die back because they're used to you pushing them out of the way. And that's like your old habits dying back. And the new trail that you're forging becomes easier to follow until you can follow it with ease and you don't even have to think about it. So that leads into my third point, which is a strategy I call active redirection. So basically neuroplasticity is happening in us all the time. And when we become ill, we form these new neural pathways that are centered around fear and discouragement and fatigue and pain and sensitivities and all of our symptoms. We want to break those habits. And the easiest way to do that is to form new ones. So if someone says, don't look at the pink elephant, of course, you're going to stare at the pink elephant, right? That doesn't work at all. The only way you're going to be able to shift the focus of your attention from the pink elephant is if maybe there's a blue ibex over on the other side that's really grabbing your attention. So the strategy of active redirection is to use every occurrence of a symptom. So, oh, I notice a headache. Oh, I notice my stomach is unsettled. I notice my leg is weak, whatever it is, and use that as a reminder to shift on purpose the focus of your attention to something you want to practice. So you want to practice feeling happy, feeling calm, feeling safe, feeling engaged, feeling connected, feeling creative. And so every time you shift your focus from something you don't want, the habit you're trying to break, to what you do want, the habit you're trying to form, and you practice it over and over and over, just like any other skill, you're going to get better at it. So neuroplasticity is basically a fancy word for learning. Then the fourth part of my four-legged chair, let's say, is then you actually have to start doing some of the stuff in life that you want to accomplish. So you can become this expert meditator and breather and actively redirect, but you don't yet have your life back, right? To get your life back, you actually have to take baby steps and start doing some of the things that maybe you used to enjoy but had to give up, or maybe new things that you've thought of that you want to try.
That is very hopeful for all of us, I think, and really helps me understand how neuroplasticity works. I hope it does others as well. Remember, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. And some of my community in particular was commenting on their most profound limitation is the fatigue, that disabling fatigue, where it is stopping them from being able to do those things that they love. Is this something that will help with neuroplasticity?
Right. This is the $6 million question. And I think the answer is different depending who you ask. So I'm just going to give you my personal take based on my reading, my understanding of how the brain works, and my experience with myself and my patients. So when I started practicing neuroplasticity in 2014, I was incredibly lucky, and my lifelong MCS went away in a week. Not 100%, but like 80% gone. And then I'm probably never 100%. I'm always going to be slightly sensitive, but basically I can go where I want, do what I want. I don't really give it a second thought unless I'm in a super toxic environment like I don't know. I haven't even been in one lately. Has to be pretty severe. So the reason why I think that symptom responded so well is that we now know that most sensitivities, including pain, because pain is like a sensitivity to the signals coming from the body of discomfort. So anything that's generated by the brain is going to respond incredibly well and more easily to neuroplasticity than things that are generated by the body. So, as an example, I'm hypermobile. This is the cause of many of my physical aches and pains. Neuroplasticity is not going to change the alignment of my legs, right? I've had them my whole life. I can envision straight legs all I want, but unfortunately, you kind of get what you get in terms of those musculoskeletal things. But multiple chemical sensitivity, which is generated by the brain, responded incredibly quickly. I'm working on another symptom right now. The fridge in my van is incredibly noisy. So this is a sensitivity symptom and it was making me crazy. I was waking up multiple times a night. And I decide, okay, I teach people neuroplasticity. How can I solve this problem? So I started doing in my imagination, because that's another, I haven't had time to share everything, but another really good way to practice if you can't actually do something yet is to imagine it, right? That's activating a lot of those neural pathways that you're trying to create. So I started imagining that the noise of my fridge and my furnace and the train going by, because many campgrounds are right by train tracks, is calming and soothing. And I literally started that 2 weeks ago, and I've slept through the night ever since. So it changed incredibly quickly because sensitivity to noise is also generated by the brain. Now, fatigue is different, in my opinion. If you go to many neuroplasticity course websites, they promise everything will be cured, right? Including ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. And I don't doubt the people who say they're fully recovered. I'm sure they're sharing, a genuine experience. But here's how I think about it. At its essence, in my opinion, the energy problem in ME and CFS is due to the mitochondria not making enough energy. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why they're not doing that. They're not broken, they're just shut down because they're experiencing stress and they're trying to protect us by going into a hibernation mode. So our cells aren't damaged, our mitochondria are not damaged. This is very hopeful news, but they're shut down. And the only way we can get those cells out of what's called the cell danger response and back to complete the healing cycle to end up at full health is if we can manage or mitigate some of the things that are stressors to them. Oxidative damage. So if we have an ongoing infection, if we have an ultra processed food diet, if we're not sleeping well enough, if we're not pacing and we're continually running our energy down to its like bare minimum, these are all stressing our cells and they're not going to move into healing. So I feel like all this foundational self-management, anything we can do to physically and psychologically calm our system is going to give ourselves a fighting chance of deciding that they can function fully. Until that happens, I don't think neuroplasticity alone is going to somehow help the cells to make more energy. I think it's indirect. So in my experience with, hundreds of patients now that have gone through my various programs that involve neuroplasticity, it's almost universal that they say their pain, their sensitivities, and their mental health symptoms improve relatively quickly and easily. So we're talking maybe a couple of months to 6 months. That's kind of the time frame. But that their energy is stubbornly resistant. And I think we can influence our energy levels and our cell function indirectly through neuroplasticity, and some lucky people have that happen. So, for example, if I get really, really good at creating a new habit in which my brain is calm and I handle daily stressors in my life with ease, the cells will get the message that things are okay. My immune system will become more active to fight off bad guys, and it will help my cell energy systems return to normal. But I think it's indirect, it takes longer, and for some people, it may just not happen because they've got biomedical things like, for example, mold toxins, Lyme, like post-infectious issues going on. What would be some other examples like severe POTS, autonomic dysfunction that keeps throwing their system into overdrive that maybe is not adequately treated. So I think if you have one of these physical comorbidities that's giving the cells the accurate message that it's actually not safe to come out of this hibernation mode, they won't do so. I hope that made sense. That was a little bit of a lengthy answer.
That made a lot of sense. And I just want to
Okay.
remind everyone this is recorded, so you can replay this. And especially if you're having cognitive issues right now, don't fret, just relax and enjoy it. You can come back. But I really appreciate your honesty on that, Dr. Stein. I know there are a lot of people with neuroplasticity in particular who are claiming this to be a cure-all. So I really respect the honesty of who it can help, how it can help. I think you kind of answered almost my last question, so I'm going to read it to
Okay.
you anyway, but please feel free to add on anything else you'd like. So
Sure.
we talked about it being, is this a cure? So for chronic complex disease and what people can expect. So that was kind of the final question, but also if there's anything else you would like to share with us.
Yeah, I just thought of one other thing I kind of left out of my personal story. So the part I left out is like the hundreds of thousands of dollars I spent getting fancy tests and trying fancy supplements and even expensive drugs. Like I tested positive for Lyme disease at one point. I did IV antibiotics. I have mold exposure. I've done mold protocols. I've done mitochondrial protocols. I saw Paul Cheney and did buffalo goo, for any of you who are old enough to know what that is. So, like, I've traveled the world. I thought, okay, I'm going to use my privilege as a physician to connect with these experts and see what they can do for me. None of those things got me better, right? In the end, it was hanging in there with the foundational self management every single day of my life. I'm now on year 36. I'm still doing it every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't do my best, to get enough sleep, to pace. My energy envelope is much, much higher, but I don't go nuts with it, right? To eat properly, to even though I'm not chemically sensitive, I still have air filters in my house. I have a water filter in my van, right? I do what I can on a daily basis to keep the stressor burden on my cells as low as possible. And then when specific issues arise, I use the neuroplasticity. Um, these are all what I call no to low cost, things that are accessible to the average person if they have some simple instruction. And therefore, as a result of my experience, that I've tried all these fancy things and they didn't give me sustained progress, but these foundational self-management strategies did. Now in my daily learning, I'm constantly reading, listening to podcasts, etc. I'm starting to learn the biology of why that's the case, and that our exposure to the normal things that our ancestors were exposed to, like light, dark, heat, cold, that basic, our biology is created to utilize those signals for optimal health. And if we learn how to do that, I think we have a fighting chance. Some of us might need some additional fancy tools and protocols, absolutely. But for the majority, I think the most powerful thing we can do are the fundamentals. And that's what I like all of my online courses and my membership, all the stuff that I offer through my website, that is my focus, things that the average person can do that's financially accessible.
Thank you. And maybe we'll have you even put in the chat your website. So for people
Sure.
who are wanting to go there, and Dr. Stein's going to hang around to the end to help answer questions. So thank you very much for that very
You're
informative
welcome.
information.
And now, Shannon, I'm really looking forward to your presentation because you were recommended to me by someone from who's in both of our communities who's severely ill. And the idea, and I've had so many patients over the decades of my practice try yoga and crash. So I'm just super interested to hear, some of the adjustments, I guess, maybe that you've made that enable you and other people who are moderately severely ill to benefit from yoga. So I'm going to turn off my devices now and just listen.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, I guess I'll start with a little background. I do have ME. That's what I've been diagnosed with, and I've had it for a long time now. And like a lot of you here, for me, it was life changing. I was 28, I was thriving, I was athletic, I was traveling the world, I was highly ambitious and really thought I could do anything if I worked hard. And then my change of events turned out when I went on a trip to Malaysia and I had to get a bunch of vaccinations all at once and then went to the Malaysian jungle. And I never had a conclusive information on what caused it. But for me, that's where everything changed. And I returned home to Canada and similar to many of you here, tried so many doctors, so many specialists, so many treatments, so many protocols, spent thousands of dollars, and I never recovered. Um, I also developed dysautonomia, and through the exercise stress test, it was confirmed that I had low VO2 max and pulmonary issues as a result. So, finding ways to exercise to someone who used to be an athlete was really hard. And especially finding those ways, because similarly to what Ellie was describing, I believed that you could just somehow get your way out of this illness. It was mind over matter. So I was pushing and crashing and pushing and crashing. And I realized it wasn't working. So I decided to adapt movement very gently, very easily within my energy envelope because I was finding there weren't any yoga classes out there that tailored to our specific needs. Even I was even doing senior yoga, and that was too much. It crashed me. So from home, I was experimenting, and I found that this therapeutic type and style of yoga, when I started to keep it at baseline and then gradually improved, my symptoms were getting better. My physical energy was improving. My stamina was getting stronger. My mental health was improving. I was feeling more calm and at ease in my body than I had in years. So I thought this was something I could share with my community because there really wasn't a yoga practice out there that catered to us. So I decided, thanks to COVID, I was able to get training and I started doing some training for therapeutic yoga. And sometimes it was from my bed. And I continued on and got certification in somatic yoga, which I'll discuss in a little bit, restorative yoga, because these were the fundamental tools that helped me. And I really want to show you I'm a bit of a research nerd because of my husband. I'm going to show you a little bit of a presentation for those who are visual learners. to show you what are the things and the ways this has helped. Because yoga, if you have any preconceived notions of what it is, you're picturing someone really flexible or really skinny or doing like crazy things, like get that out of your head. That's not what we're doing here. Um, it's so much more than that. It's breathing. It's calming the mind. It's getting in touch and calming that central nervous system. And I'm going to share my screen now to give you some examples of the research that I found and why it's so helpful for our community. All right, so movement. That's usually what people think of for yoga. Now, all know that people with these limitations need to be careful when selecting safe ways to move your body within respecting limitations. This is where adaptive therapeutic yoga can be particularly beneficial. It's known for its gentle approach, and it also enhances strength, flexibility, mobility, and balance. All the research studies show that practicing therapeutic yoga can reduce chronic pain, inflammation, and actually help increase those energy levels. It also improves blood circulation and alleviates common symptoms associated with reduced physical activity. So, breath work. Now, we know that dealing with persistent disabling symptoms like fatigue or chronic pain, maintaining healthy breathing patterns is really challenging. With these conditions, it can frequently result in shallow or quick or erratic breathing, which unfortunately only makes our symptoms worse. So, in all my classes, we engage in slow, deep breathing, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and this induces that relaxation response. There's another type that we use a lot, which is diaphragmatic breathing. So, this is more known as belly breathing. This is where we consciously guide the belly or the breath into the belly for deeper, fuller breaths, and we extend the inhale. So even just now, take for a moment, just take a nice cleansing breath through the nose and sigh it out slowly through the mouth. Try that again. Breathe in through the nose. Sigh it out slowly. Ah, one more time in your own time. No, and just notice, do you feel any shift? We only did it 3 times, but you might notice a little sense of feeling more grounded or calmer. So, this type of breathing enhances immune function, which we really need. It boosts cellular energy. It reduces lactic acid buildup, and it actually increases our stamina because we're breathing fuller into the body. So we can reduce stress hormones. And I can tell you from my own lab reports that once I started this specialized breathing, my cortisol levels, I didn't do anything else. All I did was this breathing. My cortisol levels dropped back into normal range. And my doctor was asking me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "It's this new yoga I'm learning." And she was very encouraged and wanted me to continue. And since then, they've stayed low. So it's a real nice way to also balance your hormone levels, and it's going to increase your well being as a result. So, another key component is meditation, which I include in all my classes. And with this, we know it's an important tool for management because most of us here, myself included, have significant impairments in neurological functioning. You may have processing issues or retention difficulties. I always have feelings of brain fog and overall cognitive performance. So, this is why I'm reading right now to also help me keep on track. But this is where I found meditation really helpful. And here's why. When we meditate, it actually increases blood flow to the brain. This creates new neural pathways in our brain. When we make these connections, coupled with improvements in gray matter, this contributes to enhancing your focus and memory retention. So, when we meditate, our brain waves actually transition from an active beta state to a more relaxed state of alpha and theta. And this aids for when you're in a high stress or an anxiety moment. To further that, if you keep meditating, sometimes you can reach what's called a delta wave state. And this is where it's really going to help you with your sleep quality. So if you're someone who suffers from insomnia, this is a very helpful tool. There has been numerous studies that have demonstrated the positive effect on meditation on long-term cognitive abilities in brain health. The styles of yoga I've become certified in are somatic is one of them. And I'm going to give a review of what it is. And just so you know, it's not to be confused with psychosomatic. We do not like that term here, I know from my own experience. It's nothing to do with that. It's soma in meaning embodying your mind, body, and spirit. So, how somatics works is it's a neuromuscular retraining system that addresses musculoskeletal issues by reorganizing how your nervous system controls and senses muscle movements. So, unlike traditional yoga, somatics emphasizes on how the movement feels from the inside over achieving a specific pose. We do this through slow, gentle movements, and somatics aims to teach the brain to relax and coordinate these muscles more effectively. Now, we know many of you probably can relate to this. It's not uncommon. When you have chronic illness, you may be at odds with your body and wanting to connect from the sensory experience as a way to avoid being overwhelmed by symptoms. Unfortunately, this kicks the nervous system into high alert, making us feel even more unsafe in our bodies. So, this is where somatic yoga is particularly helpful. By breaking down the movement into smaller, slower parts, just like neuroplasticity, the brain can be rewired to establish connection with the body. This prompts the nervous system, hey, everything's okay, you're safe. This makes it easier for muscle movements, and this even makes it more efficient in our muscle movements, which then gives us more room for energy. This approach enhances functionality, helps manage chronic symptoms, and overall improves quality of well life. So, you may be more familiar with restorative love yoga, and managing our symptoms really can take its toll physically and mentally. How could it not? It's impossible for anyone with a chronic illness not to find problems physically, mentally, emotionally, just from the toll. So, this is where restorative yoga is so helpful. It's renowned for its healing and rejuvenating benefits, and it extends beyond mere relaxation. It aims to enhance physical and emotional and psychological well being. So, instead of using dynamic movements or active stretching, this style of yoga focuses on gently opening your body and resting in positions of ease. Now, since I teach everything online, we can use props like blankets and pillows to support our bodies in these particular, very designed positions that allow the body to sink back into deeper relaxation. This also helps reduce hyperactivity in the frontal cortex, which promotes mind body awareness. And the clinical studies have shown that restorative yoga has profound healing effects and greatly enhances well being. So, nourish yoga and how I'm different. Well, to start with, you're having a teacher who has lived experience and totally gets what it's like and what needs to be done to adapt to our limitations. And in all my classes, poses are not held for long periods, have minimal repetitions, transitions between movements are slow, and you are encouraged to only go at your own pace. The instruction is tailored for neurological challenges, so it's provided slowly and repetition. And now, thanks to Zoom, we can be at home. You could be coming in, logging on for 10 minutes, and then deciding you've had enough that day and log off. You can not even have your Zoom video camera on. And this is completely acceptable. You don't have to do anything that causes you any discomfort. And I also have many members who practice from bed and then, depending on symptom severity, may focus on their breathing and visualize the movements. These fundamental techniques can lead to gradual improvements with safe, consistent practice. Like Dr. Stein was saying, no matter what level of functioning we have, if we respect where we're at, and maybe it's a visualizing something I'm doing, you're making those neural pathways with your brain just like an athlete does before a big game, they practice in their mind how they're going to swing a racket if it's tennis. Your brain gets used to these things. And over time, with safe, consistent practice, your body is able to respond better. So, Nourish is also committed to making yoga accessible for everyone by offering affordable pricing options and flexible scheduling. The other thing is a spoon level system. Now, some of you, probably most of you, have heard of spoon theory, but just in case you haven't, spoon theory serves as a metaphor to emphasize the need for people like us who are managing chronic illness and their energy or spoon levels. We do this to prevent symptom flare and post exertional malaise. So we all know that you only have a certain number of spoons each day, and every single task we do consumes a spoon. So I've created a spoon level system to help you select classes based on your energy levels that day. There's a huge video library with a whole range of practices from 5-minute guided meditations to a laying down in bed yoga practice, to a seated chair practice, to a standing practice if you are a more mildly affected person. And all these series are aimed at relieving common symptoms associated with things like, what if you're having a headache day? What can you do? What if you're having vestibular issues or nausea? There are different practices in yoga we can do to help alleviate these symptoms. And all my classes, the focus is to listen to your body and to respond with compassion rather than pushing through symptoms and going into post exertional malaise. When you adopt this holistic mind body approach, you have the opportunity to cultivate resilience, strength, and well being while respecting your limitations. So, lastly, the best thing I think, and what I love the most about Nourish, is our community. And I see some of our members here, and I'm so glad you've made it. If you're here because you have this invisible illness, I am certain you've encountered disbelief, you've been shamed, you've been blamed, you've had judgment, or maybe even harm from friends and family or even doctors. Nobody gets what like these illnesses are really like unless you've been living with them. And we all know none of us would choose to live like this. We all yearn to have our health back and lead a normal life once again. So, understanding the need to be validated and seen and participate in a supportive community is just simply fundamental for everyone's well being. Nourish offers community connection. So, every week after our classes, there's the opportunity to stay for a community chat. And we rally together from all over the world and we connect, we share our experiences, we discuss strategies, all in a supportive way within a positive environment. We're all different ages, different creeds, and there's people in the community that are doctors, that are students, that used to be dancers, that used to be singers and performers and athletes and you name it. We we all had those lives and have had to change because of these illnesses. And having this ability to connect, I can honestly say there's nothing like being part of a group where you can share this with each other. And for some, this has actually been as beneficial as the yoga practices themselves. This unique experience has empowered us. We've each found our voices and grown. And together we realize we truly are stronger. So I really welcome you to come and try us out. I'm going to type in the chat um, my website. And there's a free 1 week trial for anybody who is wanting to try some classes. So I am happy to have us have maybe a quick break. Do you think, Dr. Stein? So everybody can do what they need to do. Maybe have a bio break or get a drink. And then let's come back together after. What do you think, Ellie? What time? How many minutes would you like? 5 minutes? Perfect. We'll come back in 5 minutes and feel free to ask questions or type them in. Thanks for being here, everyone. And I'm just responding to a question that came into the chat. So somebody was asking about my packages, and I'm just going to do a quick screen share to show people. The first one that I'm pointing to here is a monthly membership where basically it includes, we have a live class every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Canada time. And that also includes the full video library and it has a free 1 week trial. So depending on where you live, the price is going to convert into your country. So it's 39 Canadian dollars, which I think works out to be, oh gosh, I can't remember now, 20 something American and euro. So this is really good if you're looking for live classes. If you are wanting more just to do yoga on your own time, anytime, the on-demand video membership is an option that also has a free 1 week trial. And that one doesn't include live classes. So basically, those are the only two things in terms of membership. And please let me know if you had any other questions. I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Could I add a comment, Shannon?
Please do.
So as I was listening to you, I just thought, wow. I mean, we had a bit of a hint of this when we talked, a couple weeks ago, but I thought, wow, we're actually kind of giving the same messages and teaching the exact same things, and yet we're coming from such different paradigms.
I know.
And for anyone who's known me for a long time, I'm really a biology geek. So literally my entire life, I've really downplayed the importance of the calming and the safety stuff, right? But as I have more experiences and I really pay attention to what works for me and for others, it's becoming crystal clear that that's critical. If we're in fight or flight, we don't heal when we're in fight or flight. It's that simple. Like at a biological cellular level, our cells are too busy putting out fires and responding to danger signals to be able to heal. So I'm being won over, and hearing Shannon, your kind of calm demeanor, I'm like, "Ah, this is great."
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Sharon, are you? Oh, I thought you were. Was that Marjorie? Oh, Sharon's
Yeah, that
typing.
that was me.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just giggling.
Oh, okay.
So I'm really curious when what I presented, if that was very clear to people, or usually there's a ton of questions. So I'm
Hmm.
just wondering, as you listened and you're trying to apply maybe some of the things I said to your own situation, whether any questions arise for you. And I see being invited to a class.
Yes, I'll send you the link.
I have a question. So you were saying that you can't, let me see, let me look through my notes here. Um, when a symptom comes up, say pain or something, you take that as a signal to then practice noticing or practice something that you do want, like
Right.
feeling happy, or could you expand on that?
Yeah, sure.
Uh,
So I
yeah.
think what again, trying to, I've been studying this for so long, and the challenge is to put it into simple language that people can then go, oh, I get it, do this. So that's what I'm trying, attempting to do with this answer. So say I'm noticing pain or fatigue, even though fatigue doesn't maybe changes quickly, it's still worth working on, right? So if every time I feel fatigue, even below my level of awareness, I fall into discouragement and like, oh, here we go, same old, same old. That's activating my fight or flight, because my brain is going, oh, something's wrong, right? So I didn't even get into some of the other important aspects of neuroplasticity, but catching and changing self-talk is a big aspect. So, say I'm in the habit of spending a lot of time noticing my symptoms. I want to break that habit. And the only effective way to do that is to create a new habit and focus on that. So, it could be anything. I could just simply change from a negative message to a positive one in my mind. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening again, to, oh, I'm rewiring right now. This is an opportunity to change my brain. um, I could focus on anything that makes me feel good in any of my senses. So I could go to one of Shannon's classes. I could change my breathing. I could use essential oils if I tolerate them. I could do gentle movement. I could watch something pleasing. I could imagine a beautiful color. I could listen to beautiful music. I could phone a friend and have, an engaging, supportive conversation. I could work for people that are creative. I could work on some craft or a piece of art. I could go for a walk. I could look at a tree. Here I am surrounded by like insane beauty. All of those things, it doesn't matter what it is. So the sky's the limit. The longer you actively focus on that, and all of the sensory changes that accompany it. So if I look outside, I have this beautiful snow-capped mountain literally outside the window of my van. It's astounding. So I'm not just going to look at it and go, oh, okay, now I got to go do my laundry, which is what I'm planning to do after this. But I'm going to look at it and go, wow, look at those colors. The crisp feel, because it's like 4 degrees here, the crisp feel of the air on my skin, the sound of the birds. So I'm going to engage all of my senses and really let that experience soak in so that it elevates my mood and shifts my state of being. So not only then am I rewiring my brain, but I'm telling my body, you no longer have to be in a state of danger. You could feel good, you could relax. And those imaginary experiences actually change the neurotransmitters, the neuropeptides, the hormones, everything we secrete. There's like the simplest study. So they've done a study of the half smile. Some of you might know it. So you don't have to be like glowing, you just have to go. So as soon as people did that, their biology changed. They were doing blood work before, after, during, after. It's like something so simple, like our posture or our facial expression changes our biology. So these are real things. They're psychologically helpful, but they're not only psychological, they also change our biology. Does that help?
That's very helpful. Thank you. And it actually sounds exciting to try to practice.
Okay, I have a question from the chat here. One for Ellie. Have you written any books?
Well, I've written what I call a manual. It's called Let Your Light Shine Through, Strategies for Living with ME/FM MCS. It was before long COVID, so it doesn't have long COVID in it. I wrote it about, so you can go to my website, and at the very top, there's a row of drop-down menus, and one of them says store. And under the store, there's some choices. There's my live courses, my pre-recorded self-study courses, webinars, and then books and manuals. So of course, it's under the book tab. So it's 286 pages. It's packed full of basically everything I've learned in the first 25 years of my personal experience and my practice. So all the foundational self-management stuff that I do every day. And of course, a whole bunch of things that I don't do, but they work for other people are in that. And then I'm very, very, very slowly writing a new book called More Light. And again, if you go to that same books and manuals tab, I've got 5 chapters out. So I'm about halfway done.
That's exciting. Well done.
Thank you.
That's a big
It's a lot of
undertaking.
work, but it's fun because literally I'm working on chapter 6. My proofreader sent it back to me, and then I listened to a podcast yesterday. I'm like, oh, I got to change a section,
For sure.
because the science is evolving so fast.
Okay, so I have a question from Allison. Thanks for the
Hmm.
question. Sorry for it's my camera's steady, but I keep banging my desk.
Mm.
I have to keep reminding myself. Okay, so she has a bad knee and so is typically stayed away from yoga. How would you be able to participate? Well, thankfully enough, it is not something that is going to harm your knee because we're not standing. First of all, most of it is being done laying down. If it ever is a situation of, I'm just thinking of different positions we go into, depending on what the level of severity is of your knee, if you wear a knee brace, or if it's chronic pain, or if you've had surgery or about to have surgery, these might be some things that you may potentially avoid going into those movements. We also focus on arms, neck, shoulders, stomach, ankles, like the whole body can surprisingly be moved from laying down. So, or from seated. So we're not putting a ton of weight pressure onto things. And I know somebody in class who has an injured knee who uses a rolled towel to place it under her knee when we practice. So that's maybe something you might want to try. And I'm happy, just if you have detailed questions about it, I'm happy to answer them if you send me an email or if you come to a class and stay after class. Thank you.
So, Shannon, I have a great question here I would love to
Mm,
reply to.
please.
It says, Eleanor, you described how you recently worked on improving your sound sensitivity. And I'll just say it's a miracle because I've been sound sensitive my entire life. And I, like, literally only 2 to 3 weeks ago thought, oh, I bet I could fix this. Phew. How would I approach sensitivity to smell? So I would do it in the exact same way. So there's 2 aspects to becoming less sensitive to stuff. One is to give your brain the message that it's safe, right? Because smells, the reason people with chemical sensitivity get symptoms is because their brain rightly or wrongly believes it's not safe. And so usually when this happens, we have a big exposure which isn't that safe. And now that's lodged in our brain's memory. And forevermore, the slightest hint of that, or it eventually generalizes to almost any smell, the brain sees it as an emergency and fires up a whole bunch of symptoms to warn us and get our attention. So with smell, one part is using the imagination again to because if the smell is causing symptoms, you may not be able to address it directly because it might cause you symptoms and you'll keep getting set back. So first approach it in your imagination. And there's this kind of a whole process to that, which I talk about in my Healing Through Neuroplasticity course. But at essence, you're imagining the smell that's problematic until you can do so and maintain total calm. And then you take baby steps and expose yourself to the smell. Because if you avoid the smell forevermore, your brain deduces from that that it really is dangerous, and it ramps up the volume on all of the symptom processing systems. And now if you're exposed to like the tiniest molecule of that smell, it's going to go berserk. So after you've kind of done the cognitive or mental aspect, then you have to do what's called incremental challenges, where you actually expose yourself in a controlled way that you control, not that someone else controls and not that could go sideways. So you might have the smell on the far side of the room and you stay there for 30 seconds and you breathe it in, all the while doing calming breathing, telling yourself, what a beautiful smell. So a personal example, even after my chemical sensitivity had gotten much better, I went swimming and they had these, I'll try not to use bad language. They had these plug-in smelly things, right, in the change room of the pool. And my first reaction was like, okay, that's a danger response. And then I thought, okay, this is just reinforcing the danger message. So I literally walked up to the plug-in, took a deep breath, and said to myself at the same time, what a beautiful floral smell. And I went swimming. When I came back into the dressing room after, I did the same thing. Sometime later, I was at that same pool. It's in another city. And I didn't even notice it. The plugin was still there. So it can literally be that fast that you give your brain the message that this is not dangerous, because it isn't. I mean, you wouldn't want to sleep next to it and breathe it in for 8 hours because it has bad chemicals, but breathing it for 10 minutes is not going to hurt me. So I'm giving myself an accurate message of safety. And then I'm changing the experience in the moment. So whereas before, in that moment, it would have activated my fight or flight, I give myself the opportunity for that to happen and shift my experience to one of calm. And now I've continued to do that with different floral scented products. And I just go, I'm actually to the point where I actually enjoy them. Like I'm not just kind of doing that to convince my brain. Again, I wouldn't want them in my house because I don't want to be exposed to chemicals, but I can see now finally after, 10 years of working on this, why people like them. So I've really rewired my brain. My default is very different now.
How
That
long
was
do
a
you think
long
it took
answer.
you for doing that as well, would you say? Just to give
The
everyone kind
smell
of an
thing.
idea. Yeah.
So my chemical sensitivity literally, like I said, it dropped about 80% in a week,
Wow.
but I took a week off work and I spent several hours a day practicing, right? With a specific instruction. Like I wasn't just randomly trying to make it up as I went. So it does help to take a course, whether it's my course or anybody else's course, and follow the directions, right?
Yes.
We've put a lot of thought into them. We came up, so don't just do your own thing. It really helps to have directions from someone who's had success. Um, I know people for whom it's taken much longer. We're all different.
Exactly.
It's just hard to say. For me, energy took a lot longer,
Yeah.
and I still have a peer group of people who I went through my training with, and some of them, their energy improved really quickly, and I was super envious of their experience. And then it happened for me kind of when I wasn't really paying attention to it.
Interesting.
But most people in the field say you should be able to make pretty significant gains within 6 months. Now, that sounds painfully slow, but for me, some things have happened quicker, like my sensitivity to the fridge. Unbelievable. Like, I woke up this morning and I forgot I had a fridge. What? I was so focused on that fridge all last summer, I could barely stand it. So it really can work, and it can work fast. The recommended time that you have to spend every day is 1 hour. So that doesn't have to be 1 hour altogether, because that's too exhausting for many people. You can break it into literally like 6-10 minutes bundles. You can break it into just redirecting your attention 500 times a day for like 30 seconds. So whatever works for you. But the overall focus on the new habit or the new learning, most people believe it has to be about an hour a day.
Okay. There's another question in the chat if you can still
Sure, which one?
so
With
they're asked
smells I resolved?
it's I usually note the symptom. This is about your refocusing. I
Oh,
usually note
okay.
the symptom, maybe stop what I'm doing and rest. If really bad headache, take a Tylenol. Is Ellie saying to skip these steps before refocus? And then goes on to say, often
Yes.
then I can ignore symptoms and continue doing what I was. Should I be doing something different?
So that allows me to talk about something. A lot of this isn't tested, right? I've observed and kind of tested in myself and the people who work with me, but I don't have a double-blind placebo-controlled trial to prove what I'm saying. The research into neuroplasticity is in its infancy, and I'm really happy to say I'm part of a large Canada-wide research team, and we have funding, and we're going to be testing a program in people with ME and long COVID. So we're picking the hardest people, the people for whom fatigue is the biggest problem. So just saying, hang tight, we're on it, but it takes 3 years to do a study. So in the meantime, this is my opinion, right? I don't want to put it out there as more than it is. So in my opinion, it is more effective to refocus than to distract or ignore. Because, like I said, if someone says, ignore that pink elephant, it's very, very hard to do unless you have something else more interesting and engaging upon which to focus your attention. So for me, as soon as I notice a symptom, I refocus as soon as possible.
That's helpful. Very helpful. I know there's another question for you. I know we can't typically speak about prescription drugs, but you could, I'm sure, if you want, you can give your thoughts on naltrexone for fatigue for Allison.
So, Allison, I would love to answer that question because I just wrote a very detailed blog of a literature review on low-dose naltrexone. So again, if you go to those tabs across the top, I talked about my store, which is all my paid resources. But right next to that is a tab that says free resources. And there's tons of stuff, literally hours and hours and hours of free reading and watching. And the I think it's the second one down. It says helpful blogs, and literally the blog that just came out last week is all I spent several days poring over the literature and summarizing all of the studies on low dose naltrexone for chronic pain, fibromyalgia, ME/CFS and long COVID. So the reason I did that review is because everyone's talking about LDN like it's the next best thing and it's going to cure everybody. I was using it in my practice as far back as 2012, and I really didn't notice it to be amazing. Now, I notice as soon as I say that, of course, someone just shares in the chat that it helped with sleep. It can help some people, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. So I wanted to see what the literature said. Did it, where does it fall exactly? There are a few small studies suggesting it helps with certain things, certain symptoms in certain diseases. And there's two very well-designed Scandinavian studies using LDN and fibromyalgia that showed no benefit. And they're probably the two largest and best designed studies in the field. There's, I believe, 5 studies in process, so we don't have the results yet. And the most exciting of these in my mind is the LIFT study. Don't know what LIFT stands for, but it hasn't started yet. It's taking place at Harvard, sponsored by the Open Medicine Foundation. And it's hardcore. So they're giving people a 2-day, is it a 1-day or a 2-day? I'm not sure. Anyway, an invasive cardiopulmonary exercise test. So you can't, like, anything's wrong, they're going to find it. And then there's 4 cells. One is LDN and the other is, I believe it's pyridostigmine. So 1/4 of the people are getting both drugs, 1/4 are getting neither, 1/4 are getting LDN with a placebo pyridostigmine and vice versa. And so they're really trying to look at, is it changing any of the underlying cardiopulmonary physiology of, I believe it's only people with ME/CFS and not long COVID. So probably that study is going to take a couple years. Some of the others are in progress. We're going to know more, I would say, in 2 to 3 years. Does it really work or not?
Hmm.
Yes, it is called Mestinon in the US. I always use generics because I'm trying to not promote any drug company over another. I
Great
think.
questions.
And if
I
anyone wants, I'll just say, if anyone wants to get a 2-day cardiopulmonary exercise test, because they're very hard to find, the only place in Canada that I'm aware of is in Calgary, and that's at TCR Sport Lab. So again, another free resource on my website is recommended practitioners, and Corey Fagan, the owner of TCR Sport Lab, is on that list, and there's some details there on how to access the testing.
I've had the testing.
Mm.
I've had it somewhere else, but it is very useful information in terms of understanding your physiology, in terms of exercise. It's also like a quantifiable information to help you see, because how many times do you get blood lab results and they're normal? And
Mm-hmm.
this will actually show you the functioning. I will say though, be prepared to need to recover after.
Yeah. Yes, I am the Eleanor Stein who worked in Calgary. I still live in Calgary. That's my home base.
I had mine done, this would have been over maybe 10 years ago now, but it was through Ottawa. They were doing a research
Oh,
study with
wow.
Dr. Byron Hyde, who's now since
Oh, okay.
retired.
Yeah,
And so I did the 2-day one, and I don't unfortunately believe they offer that anymore.
right.
You may want to look if you are, I'm not sure where you're located, Caitlin, if you're in Canada or the
I
States or
think,
Europe.
I mean, I
Toronto.
could be
Oh,
wrong, but I think Calgary may be the only location in Canada.
there is also, Caitlin, for you in Toronto, Dr. Harvey is a cardiologist that specializes in POTS and dysautonomia. So that's another avenue to go down. If you haven't looked into it yet, you might already have, is the Environmental Health Clinic for in Toronto. It's Women's College
Women's College
Hospital,
Hospital,
right?
yeah.
Huge waiting
Yeah.
list.
But
Just
they're
prepare.
great. Yeah, they really know. They've been in it as long as me.
Yeah. Oh, you're
I
on the
think
list. Yeah.
the two head people there have been in it for decades.
They are amazing. Dedicated.
Maybe we're done? No more questions?
Yeah, we'll see. I think we are done.
I do
So
have another question if I may, but if we're out of time, that's fine.
go ahead, Caitlin.
Okay. Um, Neuroplasticity and brain fog. What is the relationship there? I know you were talking about meditation, Shannon, and how that can help. But if there's anything that you have to add, Dr. Stein.
Brain fog. So, in my humble opinion, again, opinion, not fact, the best way to decrease brain fog is through pacing. And the reason is as follows. All the cells in our body work the same way, whether they're a neuron, a muscle cell, a liver cell, a baby toe skin cell. Every cell we have has the basic same physiology. We need to burn sugar, ideally in the presence of oxygen, to make ATP, which is our form of cellular energy. And the brain is an energy hog. It uses 20% of all of the body's energy. So to me, it just makes sense that if we don't have enough energy to go around, the brain is going to shut down, right? Because if it doesn't have enough energy, it can't function adequately. And there's none of these studies are recent, but they still stand the test of time. There's literally dozens of studies, including brain imaging studies showing that this is the case. So I think the best way to improve brain fog is to pace so that you always have some energy dollars in the bank. That way, when you try to think, you've got energy to do it with.
Love that.
And I noticed some questions about where to get the test done. So the Workwell Foundation, they're the people who founded, developed, and researched the 2-day cardiopulmonary exercise test. I can't remember their exact location, but I believe they've moved, but it's somewhere in Northern California. So that might be the one that was mentioned in the chat. And the problem is most of the places I'm aware of, I'm not sure if they see patients or if they're just doing research, but there's Susan Levine in New York, Maureen Hansen in Ithaca, Betsy Keller, I think she's in Ithaca,
She
New
is.
York. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's some people that are more like I would maybe try Betsy Keller. I think she actually sees patients irrespective of whether they're in research protocols. Like if you're in Toronto, that might be your closest place to go.
She's one of the best.
I think that.
I see
Oh,
Jess has
to
her.
go to
Oh,
Women's College Hospital, yes, you have to live in Ontario. And to go to BC Women's and Children's, their program, you have to live in BC. And to go to the Nova Scotia Clinic, guess what? I think that actually that one's for all of Atlantic Canada.
so Jess, how can we help?
I hope you can hear me. I'm kind of in a crash right now. Um, I was just wondering about the refocusing because when I feel fatigued, I usually go rest and lie down. And I was just wondering if that was like counteracting the whole refocusing purpose, as in giving in to my symptoms and um, giving my brain the message that I need to, like, the fatigue is actually something that I'm in danger with, or I didn't really get the concept, so I was wondering if you
Right.
could elaborate on that.
I'll try to repeat just to make sure I understood the question correctly, okay? Because I couldn't quite hear a couple of the words. So I think your question is when you're severely ill and you need to rest and lie down a lot, as part of your pacing. Is that okay? Or is that somehow reinforcing the illness narrative? Is that
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah,
So what I would say is the most important thing if you have ME and post-exertional malaise is to live within your energy envelope. Like, more important than anything else, because we have a limited amount of energy. And if we spend it and we have none in the bank, or even worse, we go into debt by drawing on adrenaline or something, or coffee or drugs, we're in big trouble, right? So, like I said before, I believe that the way to get better with brain fog and other symptoms is to always keep a little bit of energy, money, dollars in the bank, just like financial planning, right? You always want to keep a little bit of reserve because you never know when you're going to need it. Having said that, say you are lying down because that's your energy capacity in that moment. That's totally fine. But what you could work on is your thinking. So many people, I'll just speak for myself because I'm a bit of a wuss. So when I would have a bad day, my thoughts would go to a bad place immediately. I can't believe this is happening. I thought I paced. I thought I ate well. I thought I got a good night's sleep. Why am I so tired? What's going on? This is not helpful. So what I work on now is I might not be able to change my physical status in the moment because you can't. You got what you got in terms of energy, ATP in your cells. You can change it for the future, but not for the present. But I could think, I've been here before. I know it means that I just spent a little bit too much energy. I'm going to rest. I'm going to recover, and I'm going to try again. Right? Or even so, that's a more realistic and a less negative perspective. And even better, I could say, I'm resting. While I'm resting here, I'm going to listen to a beautiful visualization that's taking me through a nature scene. Or I'm going to do a paced breathing while I'm resting here and use that time to start moving your brain and your thinking towards the habits that you want to develop, which is better health.
I love that you said that, and I agree completely in terms of trying to shift the focus of the mind onto a visualization, a yoga nidra, or your breath. Because if you're just laying down with the thoughts, it's not replenishing you. You're not actually resting.
And then, even better, but not everyone can do this when they're very crashed. Is there anything you can do in bed that you enjoy? So,
Yes.
when you're very crashed, I talk about resting with ears and eyes closed, not even listening to anything because that's actually taxing. It's turning on parts of your brain that you need to even pay attention and integrate. So, most severely ill people, I recommend lying down horizontally, maybe with your legs up, because that really helps the parasympathetic, with eyes and ears closed. And maybe at the most, you might do a paced breathing or counting or something very gentle. If you have a tiny bit more energy than that, you could do some kind of yoga nidra or visualization or meditation, because that actually takes a little bit of energy. If you have a tiny bit more than that, while you're lying down, you might read or talk to a friend or do something that's a little bit more uplifting. Because in general, you want to try to elevate your mood. You want your brain to stop connecting symptoms with misery and danger. And you want to rewire it that symptoms are maybe a temporary part of your life right now. They're no big deal. And you're working towards something better. Now, someone put in the chat, we also want to, early on, we also want to be careful. I don't know the right word, but not to criticize the here and now and not to assume that healthy is better or the desired outcome for everyone. I think that's a really good point because it's a bit of a trap to always be thinking about when I'm better or when I can do this. In Buddhism, which I'm not an expert in, but when there's a mismatch between what we have and what we want, it makes us miserable. So I've also been practicing lately acceptance practice. Some people practice gratitude. I do that sometimes. And I notice as soon as I say words like, I accept every single thing I'm experiencing now, I'm sure my parasympathetic is kicking in. Whereas if I say, I do not accept what I'm experiencing right now, like I can feel the stress like immediately come up in my core. So experiment with language yourself. And if you find some words that are very calming and reassuring for you, there are things you could develop. Again, not a religious practice, but kind of a bit of a mantra or proclamation to tell yourself those words so you could redirect your thinking to those mm, to your own proclamation. So mine is, you know, I'm fit, healthy, and happy. I'm clear thinking, and I have a perfect recall for everything that happens. I wake up refreshed, looking forward to the day with open curiosity. I mean, I change it every day, but that's kind of an example of a proclamation that never ceases to make me feel well.
It's great. I think self-compassion in these times of struggle is what is key and is only going to help soothe the body and nervous system as opposed to fighting against it.
So I don't know. I can keep going forever, of course, but Shannon, feel free to cut us off whenever you see
Well,
fit.
I just want to send a shout out right now
Yeah,
that for those of you who
right.
are needing to watch their spoons and watch their energy, we have been on for 95 minutes.
Yeah.
So don't get the FOMO of the fear of missing out because it will be recorded. You can still watch this later. It sounds like we can stay on for a little bit longer if there are questions. So just want to give you that message now in the honor of the spirit of what we're doing here is to be practicing self-care at the
So I,
forefront.
I see maybe I'll say the last two questions
Yeah.
and I hope I apologize if I missed any. So someone's saying, I found that I overpace quite a bit, i.e. in a comfort zone. Can I talk about that? So funnily enough, guess what? I just have given, so in my live sessions that I give, I just gave a two-part summary, I guess you would say, on something called hormesis, which I'm really starting to take to heart, and I'm changing a lot of things that I do on a daily basis as a result. So, in brief, hormesis is the biological reality that for our body to be as healthy as possible, it has to be challenged or stressed in small, manageable, intermittent ways by appropriate stressors, just putting all of that in parentheses, not by anything, not by huge, constant, unbearable stress. So, small doses intermittently of things like heat, cold, hunger, exercise, light, dark. These are natural environmental stressors that challenge our cells a little bit. When the cells notice that something's a little bit amiss, they upregulate, they activate all of their healing and repair mechanisms and make us healthier. So, this is a great question that's being asked. You can overpace, right? You can avoid everything. It's just like I'm starting to now experiment more with temperature. I'm in this climate controlled van. When I step out, I'm not going to wear every layer I have because I actually want to get a bit cold because that's going to challenge my body to increase my metabolism and do a whole bunch of other healthy things. It's really tricky when you're talking to someone with severe illness and severe PEM, like it's a very careful balancing act to say what is a tiny stressor, and maybe Shannon's gentle movement, might be one such measured, intermittent, acceptable gentle stressor that you can titrate to like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, as she explained. That may be an example of a little stressor that the most bodies could tolerate. Then when you get stronger, of course, you have to up the dose a little bit on the stressor. Otherwise, you're back in the comfort zone. And there was one at the bottom, something about pause. So post-acute withdrawal syndrome, chronic illness caused by drug withdrawal. I don't know a lot about drug withdrawal, but what I will say is this active redirection, right? Focusing. So if you are withdrawing from a drug, this could be a recreational drug, a drug of abuse, but it could also be a prescribed drug, right? I've worked with many, many patients over the years who are trying to get off, say, a benzodiazepine or an antidepressant, and they're getting all kinds of side effects and horrible symptoms. So if you know that the symptom is temporary, it's not going to kill you. Many other, thousands of people have come off this drug before, and that if you do it slowly enough for your body, it will be safe. So telling yourself those safety messages and then redirecting when you have a withdrawal symptom to something that uplifts your mood, I think it could be helpful. It may prevent you from kind of panicking and going back on the drug because you can't tolerate the symptoms. You'll have to let me know if that works.
Thank you.
I think I'll leave it there because we could go on for a
Yeah,
long time.
very good
Yeah.
point. I also wanted to make sure I came to Sharon's circle because she's had her hand up a couple of times.
Oh,
Hey, hello. Eleanor, can you tell us a bit more about your membership?
oh, sure. So, most of what I offer on my website are courses. Some are self-study and some are mentor-led with live sessions. But of course, I got the message loud and clear that people really value live sessions like this, right? Where you hear some information and then you have a chance to ask questions to better apply it. So I've started a membership. It's called Live with Dr. Stein. And again, it's right at the top of the store under live sessions. I present a topic every other Thursday. So not this Thursday, I think next Thursday is my next one. And there's about a 30 to 40-minute presentation. So as I mentioned, I just did 2 on this idea of hormesis, or how we can gently stress our body in a beneficial way. The next one I'm doing next week is on chronic inflammation. I'm learning tons and researching these. And then, so it's a monthly membership, maybe something like how Shannon has hers set up. My regular price is $49 a month. And for that, you get 2, and in 2 months, 3 sessions, because of it's every other week, not twice a month. And in addition, I have, like Shannon does, I have a live community. So you can be emailing and direct messaging and asking questions to the other people who attended the session, and, trying to further your knowledge. All the sessions are recorded, they're all logged, and those recordings will stay up for probably about a year. So it means that if you join, you not only get access to the upcoming sessions, but I started it in February, so I've done 7 sessions, so you'll get access to everything that you missed. And in recognition that for some people, $49 a month is a lot, I have a steep, maybe a sleep too, a steep sliding scale. So if you contact us with some evidence that you're on low income, and our definition of that is that you're earning less than 30,000 of the currency of your country per year, we will send you a special checkout page, and you can choose what you pay, either $29 a month or $9 a month. So right now in my membership, I have about 10 people that are on the $9 a month. So nobody knows, I don't pay attention. I just look at my stats from time to time to get a sense of, where people are at. So just to say, please don't stay away because of the money, because it's absolutely acceptable to apply for that low rate. Oh, and then also, just as a bonus, I started a monthly expert speaker series of webinars. They're also all on the webpage, the ones that have gone already, and the 2 upcoming ones at the end of May and the end of June are both on chronic Lyme disease. So they're on topics that I'm not an expert on, and I'm kind of bringing in people that are. Other topics are going to be Mediterranean diet, food sensitivities, MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, acupressure, use of nutritional supplements. So these are some, I'm trying to make it very diverse, um, because everybody has special needs and everybody connects with different types of interventions. And my focus in the sessions is no to low cost interventions. So some of the things, of course, cost money, but in every single session, I'm focusing on at least some interventions that are extremely accessible.
I wouldn't mind just popping into, now that you've reminded me about the
Hmm.
sliding scale.
Yeah.
I also offer a sliding scale under the same conditions. So it's right on my website. Feel free to check that out. It's for both the memberships, depending on what you need more. Because I, I, like Ellie said, I don't want money to be the reason you don't have access to something like this.
Hmm. Yeah, we're so closely aligned, Shannon, I think, in our value systems
I
and
think so.
surprisingly enough in what we offer.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a long answer, but hopefully I don't see any questions popping up. So
Oh, I think that
I
it's
think we
probably a good
answered it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we hope that you'll stay in touch. If you have questions for either of us, please feel free to reach out, send us an email, come to one of our classes. We'd be happy to welcome you.
I was just going to say, Shan, I also have the free session. So you sign up and you get 2 weeks free, which means 1 free session. So you can really judge if that's for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. Now we all have a rest and some of
Yes.
us get to go do our laundry. Thanks for hosting, Shannon. It was a
You
pleasure.
bet. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.